It's ETE for me. We are live.
Community broadcasting, education, technology, and entertainment.
Welcome to the CoBeat Podcast, hosted by D. Bale.
Hey, what up, world? It's your media arts specialist, D. Bale, host of the CoBeat Podcast. Community broadcasting, education, technology, and entertainment. CoBeat Podcast is hosted by Podbean. Although you might be catching this episode on another different streaming service, we just appreciate you being here. So thank you for that. The CoBeat Podcast is also the home of something I created called ETE Literacy, which is education, technology, and entertainment, and just making sure that we have all the information needed to see how those three fields connect, interconnect, and correlate with each other. All right. So the last episode, we talked about a couple of different things, but mainly we were talking about sort of my transition from working in entertainment, moving into education, and then how I started basically a new path with learning and building and growing with educational technology, receiving my master's degree in ed tech along with my STEM certificate.
An educational podcast. What's your name, sir?
Doug Bailey.
Doug Bailey is in the building.
We need to get the STEM, the science, and technology, engineering, math. Hopefully get an educational podcast so we can start teaching our community.
There you go.
That's beautiful.
Now, the clip that you just finished hearing is a clip that was from about a year and a half ago at Sirius XM Radio at a very popular syndicated radio show called Sway in the Morning, hosted by highly respected journalist Sway Calloway, along with his co-hosts Heather B. and Tracy G. Shout out to my coworker, Mr. Stewart. He was able to arrange a field trip for us to take our students to Sirius XM for a tour. And unbeknownst to us, we actually ended up on the show live on the air, and I got a chance to kind of introduce my thought of starting this very show, the CoBeat Podcast, talking to Sway about how important STEM was. And it was just an amazing opportunity and experience. And he actually allowed one of my students who goes by the rap name Beargamo, Beargamo, gave him an opportunity to spit a live freestyle on air alongside a very popular rapper named Too Rare, who hails from Philadelphia. And Too Rare was really cool, really gracious to allow our students to kind of crash his interview. Overall, it was just such an exciting and positive experience for us. And I just remember that encouragement I got from Sway after the show to tell me to push forward with this, because education is something that is extremely important. We live in an era where kind of the social media news of the day kind of takes precedent over a lot of the other important things, or more important things that are taking place in our world. And I knew this wasn't going to be a podcast that was going to jump out the gate and do millions of views. But I want to say to each and every one of you that have found this podcast, clicked, streamed, downloaded, I really appreciate it. And over time, you know, the podcast will definitely grow. I'll definitely be able to provide more insight on educational technology and all of its components as I go through this doctoral journey, which I will be starting July of 2024. Just like I made it very clear to Sway and his team the importance of STEM, I kind of left the last episode off with talking about the importance of STEM. So I wanted to get more into sort of the reasons why STEM is so important and how it connects with what we call 21st century skills, which essentially is going to be necessary for anybody to have to be successful in this new age of information that we live in. Being solid is probably one of the best things that somebody can have as an attribute. Being solid is somebody that stands by their principles. Being solid is somebody that has integrity. Being solid is somebody that gives you their word and they're able to keep their word. So if I say somebody is solid, that's probably like one of the highest compliments that I can give to somebody. If I say something is solid, it's the same thing. So the name of this episode is STEM is Solid, and it's solid because it's something that somebody that is solid will possibly possess to move and navigate through this world that is changing every single day. And we're going to talk about some of those changes as well, and how it's going to affect not only the youth that I serve or that you serve, but also to everybody. First and foremost, how is STEM defined? STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it is an interdisciplinary approach to learning where academic concepts are integrated into real world hands-on experiences. And that came directly from ChatGPT, believe it or not. But I'm going to utilize ChatGPT services to help kind of flesh out some of these things we're talking about today, and then add my own experience that I was able to gather, not just in school during graduate studies, but also how I was able to apply it to my everyday work position as an educator. STEM is something that fosters critical thinking, problem-solving skills, creativity, and innovation. So when we talk about interdisciplinary approaches, we're talking about blending multiple academic principles into one activity. So when we're saying STEM, it's science with math, it's science with technology, it's science with engineering, engineering with math, technology with science, and just how all of these things kind of connect and work together. Two ways that we can utilize STEM approaches in teaching and education are by project-based learning, okay, which is a teaching method where students gain knowledge and skills by working for an extended period of time to investigate and respond to an authentic, engaging, and complex question, problem, or challenge, according to ChatGPT and according to what I was able to learn during my graduate studies. So you have project-based learning, and then you have blended learning. So blended learning basically combines traditional face-to-face instruction with online learning activities. And it's basically just giving students variety in the ways that they're picking up information. So for instance, for my auditory learners, they might listen to a podcast that gives them a review of social studies on the GED exam and what type of tips and tricks they should be using. If it's a more visual learner, it might be an infographic that explains how recycling helps out our community. So instead of just talking somebody down, it might just be the infographic, which will show pictures and step-by-step how to recycle and what each step does to contribute to making our world a better place through recycling. So some examples that I have in terms of what I was able to do with blended learning is my Study and Prep website. The Study and Prep website is basically a one-stop shop for all of the resources that my students would need in order to pass the GED exam. And what I did is I use universal design learning techniques, which basically make sure that all modes of engagement would be available for students to be able to learn. So that's where the podcast came in for auditory learners. So I created a small guide of how to attack the questions that would be on the GED exam. I also gave them information on how to analyze the textbook that they have and what is the best way to gain knowledge from the textbook by asking how and why questions with the key ideas that are stated in each chapter. So that was a big piece of blended learning. In addition, I had YouTube videos on the site, and then I had a couple of other engaging lessons that utilize elements of gamification that would just give our students something additional to reinforce whatever I was teaching throughout the week. So that way, when they were home on the weekends, if they needed that reinforcement, they could simply go to the Study and Prep website. In terms of my project-based learning, I was able to tap into one of our community service sites, Let's Celebrate in Jersey City, which is a food pantry / soup kitchen. And we were able to tackle the issue of food insufficiency. And the project-based learning helped our kids foster many of the things that are crucial to 21st century skills and 21st century success. And those things included what they call the 4 C's. So that's critical thinking, that's creativity, that's communication, and that's collaboration. So those 4 C's are crucial to anyone that wants to perform well on a job, on a project, throughout their career. Those 4 C's are just important and viable for students to learn while they're in school. So when they get out, they'll be able to not only get a career, but they'll be able to keep a career if they're strong in those 4 areas. Just looking on like how blended learning and project-based learning, also known as PBLs, which I'll refer to them as that for the rest of the episode. How do PBLs and blended learning help to grow skills that will help out students later on in life? First and foremost, when we're looking at blended learning, it's the flexibility and learning modalities. For students, that means that they're able to learn by watching videos. They're able to learn through online tutorials, hands-on activities for our kinetic learners, because some people learn better with their hands. And that flexibility also helps our students to be able to adapt to multiple type of situations, even after they're in school, when they're going out for a job or they're going out for a career. And that also taps into something we call executive functioning, which is necessary for any human being to be able to perform well throughout life. And flexible thinking is one component of executive functioning. So that means I have the flexibility to go from one task to another task without too much disturbance or too much hesitation. So by working on a blended learning project, students will start to gain flexibilities in the different ways that they're able to learn. Of course, they'll have access to different resources that are technology fused, which is important, of course, moving forward in a world that's going to be surrounded by technology. Blended learning, of course, also gives our students real world applications. So we're able to use things hands on, and we're able to look at real world STEM scenarios that are impacting different situations throughout society. And then we're looking at, of course, the collaborative efforts when students are able to work together. That's where diversity is also something that is of the highest importance, because the world is not just filled with one type of person or just one particular race. There's many different cultures, many different races, and we are tasked to live in this world together. Sometimes our differences separate us to the point where we end up in war. We're ending up in situations where we're extremely hateful towards each other. But realistically, I don't think anybody wants to live like that. So with blended learning and with PBLs, it's kind of like forcing us to look at different points of views, especially when we're bringing in diverse voices. I will go as far as to say, I think regardless of what race or what religion you are, everybody wants to live peacefully. I don't think anybody wakes up and wants to live in a society that's extremely chaotic or a society where there's anarchy. I think everybody, for the most part, wants to live in a peaceful world. So since we're all here and we all have these differences, we have to learn how to make those differences work for us. So I think by having collaborative learning experiences through PBLs and through blended learning, it's something that will strengthen not only, STEM skills, but it'll also strengthen character and ethics and morale, and be able to look at people that are different from us, that have different points of views, and maybe agree to disagree, but we're still having a respect for each other and a consciousness for each other. And I think those things sometimes get lost in all of the social media chatter and then just some of the disagreements that we have. When we're looking at PBLs, we're also looking at inquiry-based learning. When students are sitting around and they're trying to figure out answers to certain problems, that's where those 4 C's really kick in and the wheels get to turning. And when students are able to put aside their differences and focus on those 4 C's when looking at a problem, there's no telling the type of potential and what type of solutions can come out of those types of brainstorming problems. STEM concepts also promote skills in authentic meaning context. According to ChatGPT, students are tasked to work together. They're tasked to work to real world problems and applications. Once again, if you're an educator and you're trying to find something in terms of a real world problem to tackle, you can definitely check out UN Sustainable Goals. Just Google UN, and it stands for United Nations Sustainable Goals. These are basically different issues that the United Nations have deemed that are problematic throughout the world. Of course, poverty, hunger, those are a couple of things that are on the list that you can utilize in a lesson plan to set up an actual PBL or blended learning experience. So definitely check out the UN Sustainable Goals and just Google that, and you can check out some of those and you can start there. Let's talk a little bit about 21st century skills. 21st century skills are essential for today's world and how the world is rapidly changing. Students will need these skills in order to get, keep, and maintain a position. So we're talking about critical thinking, of course, and problem solving. And STEM definitely helps to promote that through coding, experimentation, engineering challenges. And we'll talk a little bit more about the engineer design process in a few. With inquiry-based learning, going back to that, students will be able to ask questions. They'll be able to get their evidence together, evaluate their information, and then come up with some type of solution or some type of decision regarding it. Creativity is also another part of the 4 C's that we just mentioned, and innovation. So when students are involved with activities that contain robotics, design thinking, or even PBL learning, they will be able to look at creative ways to find solutions to problems, which not only can be fun, but it also can be very informative as well. Because I know as a kid, sometimes you might have idealistic ways about trying to solve problems. So even if it kind of shines a light on a reality of certain situations to say, wow, I thought I could do this, but that's really not feasible, then that's kind of where creativity and innovation really are pluses with STEM learning through PBLs and blended learning. We talked about communication and collaboration and, just us working together in teams. It's just kind of these lost arts, regardless of race, religion, gender. I feel like we've become such an isolated society, particularly with the invention of social media. It's not really bringing us together as much as it should. It's more divisive than anything, in my personal opinion. So whenever we get these opportunities to work together, man, it just does so much for us as a society, because there's a lot of guesstimation when it comes to dealing with people of different cultures, especially when we're not used to having exposure to different people. You might think certain people are a certain way just based on what you've read or what you've seen on television or other types of media. So I feel like collaboration really puts all of the rumors to bed, and it really gives you a clear idea of what people are like in a more realistic way. So I can't stress the importance of that, because right now it just seems like the world is we're so divided. So we need more collaborative efforts, especially when it comes to solving problems, because the problems that we're going to be solving are not just going to affect one group of people. Especially when we look at some of the UN sustainable goals, things that the United Nations have deemed things that we need to work on to make our world a better place. It's not going to just affect one group. So we have to collaborate with diverse voices. Informational literacy is another very, very important thing. When we talk about our students looking at stuff that's online, how are they able to determine what is fake news? How are they able to determine what is authentic versus what is slanderous or what is clickbait? That is something that STEM helps us to foster with the 21st century skills that are necessary. Because when you're working on a STEM-based project, you have to research. You have to be able to tell the real from the fake in order for you to be able to find solutions to certain problems in the world today. So in addition to information literacy, we're also looking at technology tools and resources and technology literacy. How do I use this smartphone to the best of my ability? What type of software should I be using to edit a particular project? What type of data should I be collecting to look at one of these sustainable goals to help me find solution-oriented answers? These are the things that STEM education will help us to incorporate. And then adaptability and resilience also, because when you're working through STEM, especially when you get to the engineer design process, you might find what you deem to be a solution, but as you try to work through the problem, you're finding that this is not working. So you have to be resilient. You have to be able to persevere. And that's just a big part of life characteristics. Like, I remember how important the Rocky movie was in terms of motivation and development, because when I think about the movie Rocky, shout out to Sylvester Stallone, the first Rocky came out right before I was born, but I literally, including the Creed movies, my whole life I've grown up watching these Rocky movies at just many different stages of my life. And one of the most important things, although this is a fictional movie, fictional character, Sylvester Stallone, he eloquently stated that
But
it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
That's how winning is done.
And that's what I feel. You know, STEM will give us that resilience, that perseverance that we need, because if we're trying to solve an issue like world hunger, are we going to just stop because we ran into a problem during the engineer design process and we tested something and it didn't work? We're just going to throw our hands up and say, oh, forget about it. Nah, we got to keep on pushing. So in addition to that, of course, STEM education gives us the awareness globally about what's happening around us, because we're not just here alone. What happens in different countries and different continents, it definitely affects us, right? Even if you look at the economy of the United States and how budgets are passed, we're consistently giving money to other countries. So why wouldn't we be concerned about what's happening in those other countries, right? People sometimes, depending on, you know, where you fall, people are upset about money be given to other countries. Some people are like, nah, we have to give money to other countries so that we're able to stabilize those countries so that whatever's happening there doesn't end up here in the United States. But the point is, we have to be aware. We have to be conscious about what's happening around us, because we are directly involved with what is happening around the world. One of the most important things that I learned while doing my STEM studies, and this will be a 2-part episode, is the engineer design process. So we know STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, STEM, in terms of science, I pretty much got that. Technology, I understood that part, and then the math portion. But what was always like kind of unclear to me was the engineering part. Like, I think about engineers as people that are able to build things, fix things. So like, how does that connect in terms of what we're doing? So it's not just engineering, it's the engineering design process. So that goes back to, even what we were talking about with PBLs. We have to identify the problem or the need. So if we're talking about, let's say, world hunger, okay, or let's just keep it local, right? Let's just say Jersey City, for instance, insufficiencies in Jersey City. So we have to clearly define that problem, and we have to understand how that problem happened, how many people that it affects. So if we just kind of focus on one particular area, let's say, in Jersey City at this soup kitchen food pantry that I used to volunteer at with my students, what is the relevant information in terms of this place? How many people does this place service on a day-to-day basis? Are there any constraints that would stop this particular organization from serving the public, right? So then we start looking at maybe they're servicing only one meal a day and it's not enough to combat food insufficiency in this particular neighborhood. So maybe we need to add an additional meal of the day. So if they're only serving lunch, then maybe we need to add dinner. If they're only serving breakfast, maybe we need to add dinner. Then we start generating ideas and brainstorming solutions. What would that take? All right. So in order for us to be able to service dinner, we probably need more food. Obviously, we would definitely need more staff members. So then we start brainstorming ideas and looking at potential situations. Then we start looking at potential solutions. And that's where the creativity, innovation comes in. You start really thinking about different ideas. Do we need more room? Can we break it up? Can we break up the room into different spaces for people that are coming in? We say, okay, we're going to add dinner. We're going to add dinner from, 5:30 to 6:30, right? And then we start developing that design. What does that look like? How do we put this together? So when we start putting it together, then we're going to start testing. All right. We're going to build that. We're going to test that prototype out. Maybe we'll do like a sample dinner for just one particular day out of the week, just to introduce it and see how it goes. So when the clients are coming in, they're eating, we're seeing, did we get enough food? Do we have enough chairs? Do we have enough tables? Do we have enough staff? How are they reacting to the food? Do we need to pick a different menu? And that's where the evaluation is going through. So now we're sitting back and we're evaluating, we're taking notes, we're looking at any revisions that have to be made. We're looking to see if there's any issues that we need to address. What can we optimize in terms of the actual activation of this dinner service? And then refining it, right? Finalizing it, making improvements, continuing to test it, maybe doing another day with some of the refinements that we did. And then when we continue testing out until we get to a flow that we feel like is great for our clients, great for staff members, great for the community, then we're going to go ahead and implement that. We're going to make it finalized. We're going to say, okay, Thursday nights, we're going to start serving dinner. And then once again, we sit back and we evaluate. We make sure that Thursday night was good, was a day that we're getting most of our clients in. Maybe we want to start expanding it to more days. So that, what I just went through was basically the engineer design process. And you can Google that, because that's something that basically, to me, is the heart of STEM. Because when you're going through that engineer design process, that's when you're utilizing math. That's when you're utilizing your technology. That's when you're utilizing your sciences. So you're putting all that into a gumbo pot and you're mixing it together.
Stay tuned to part 2 of STEM is Solid. Thanks for listening to the CoBeat podcast hosted by D. Bale. Please like, share, and subscribe. Peace.